They said I killed him, but I wasn't even in the room. What happens when your name ends up on a chart you've never seen? What do you do when your reputation, your entire life, is signed away with someone else's handwriting? And what if, deep down, a part of you starts to wonder if you deserved it anyway? That night, everything moved in slow motion. The blinking fluorescence, the taste of burnt coffee, the cold vinyl chair digging into my spine as the words echoed through the hallway, "He's gone, and it's your fault." I was a trauma resident, 3rd year. I'd memorized every protocol, every drug interaction, every goddamn blood gas level, but none of that mattered when the morgue report came back, and my initials were on the chart. But here's the thing, I never signed it. I never approved that dosage. I wasn't even on call. So why did they look at me like that? Why did Dr. Fields, the attending I worshipped, refuse to meet my eyes? Why did the head nurse walk past me like I didn't exist? I remember the way the hallway smelled that morning. Bleach and old coffee and something metallic, like blood that had already dried. I remember my shoes squeaking on the polished floor. And I remember thinking, I don't belong here anymore, but I stayed because I needed to know who really did it. And maybe I needed to know who I really was too. You think the truth will set you free, but sometimes it breaks you first. I didn't kill that man, but after what happened next, I started to wonder if I should have just taken the fall, at least that way. None of the others would have suffered, because what they did to me, that was just the beginning. The worst part was still coming. And the worst part wasn't losing everything. It was realizing no one ever really believed in me in the first place. Not even me. At first I thought it was a typo, a clerical glitch. Maybe someone clicked the wrong drop-down menu, added the wrong resident to the chart. Happens all the time, right? But the more I looked, the more it looked like me. My name, my initials, my login timestamp. Right next to a dosage I never prescribed. Midazolam, 4 milligrams. For an 83-year-old man with shallow breathing and congestive heart failure. He coded within 5 minutes. I wasn't even on the floor. I was 2 levels down, suturing a kid's eyebrow in the pediatric ER. I remember the SpongeBob Band-Aid. I remember the way the kid flinched and then laughed when I gave him the high five. I remember exactly where I was, but somehow I was also there, killing someone I'd never even seen. I stared at the monitor. The audit trail said I signed the order, but my badge was in my coat pocket, locked in the break room. And I hadn't logged into that system in over 2 hours. It didn't make sense. Until it did, there was only one person who could have used my credentials. Only one person who knew my login because we used to share everything. Nina, my co-resident, my best friend, my worst mistake. We were inseparable that first year. Shared coffee mugs, playlists, trauma shifts. She once stitched a gash on my forehead when I passed out in the locker room from dehydration. We made a pact once over vending machine M and Ims. If one of us falls, the other pulls them out of the fire. But somewhere along the way, she started to burn, and I didn't notice. She was on the same shift that night. She was with Mr. Halberd, the man who died. And she was 3 hours past the end of her shift. She should have never been alone with him. She should have never touched the system. And she sure as hell should have never used my name. But she did. And when they pulled the records, they didn't question it. Because why would they? I was the meticulous one, the type A. Nina? Well, Nina was brilliant but erratic. They trusted me. And that's what made it easier to blame me. It was almost too easy. Dr. Fields said he was disappointed. The chief said it would be discussed in the ethics review board. HR said I'd be placed on immediate administrative leave. Nobody said, "Are you sure this was you?" Nobody said, "Is it possible this isn't your fault?" Except for one person, Maribel, a night nurse who'd worked at that hospital longer than any of us had been alive. She pulled me aside in the stairwell, cigarette still tucked behind her ear. Said she saw Nina coming out of the med room, said she was crying. "She looked like she saw a ghost," Maribel whispered, "and I swear she was wearing your white coat." That was the first crack in the glass. The first moment I thought, maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe I didn't just forget. Maybe someone wanted me to doubt myself, and the part that still claws at me, the part that won't let me sleep, isn't just that she used my name. It's that she never said a word. No apology, no explanation, no panic. Just silence. That kind of silence doesn't come from guilt. It comes from strategy. She was covering her own ass and using mine to do it. We were supposed to be doctors, healers. We took an oath. But Nina, she took a shortcut, and she took me down with her. The worst part, I still don't know why, but I was going to find out, even if it meant burning everything down to the floor. The break room used to be our hiding place, away from the alarms, away from the dying, a space that smelled like instant noodles, lemon disinfectant, and burnout. But that morning, it smelled like betrayal. I walked in and found Nina already there, curled on the couch, staring blankly at the vending machine like it owed her something. My coat was hanging on the back of her chair. My coat, not hers, mine. That was the first time I felt it in my stomach, that sharp, sinking twist. Not just suspicion, certainty. She didn't even flinch when I walked in, didn't offer a hello, didn't pretend to be surprised. Just picked up her lukewarm coffee and sipped like we weren't standing in the wreckage of everything we built. I wanted to scream. Ask her why, how she could do it, but all I said was, "Nina, were you in the med room last night?" Everyone was. It was chaos. She didn't lie, not really, but it was a lie anyway, because the way she said it, casual, cold, like I was asking about cafeteria hours. There wasn't even guilt in her eyes, just exhaustion, and a flicker of something else, calculation. She knew I knew, and she knew I couldn't prove it. I checked the security logs later that night. Used the nurse's station login when no one was watching. 2:47 a.m. she badged into the med room. 2:49 a.m. Mr. Halbert's vitals dropped. 2:51 a.m. my ID logged the medication order. She had 4 minutes to ruin me, and she did it with surgical precision. I sat in that break room for a long time after she left. The couch still warm, her half-empty coffee steaming in the silence. It smelled like hazelnut. It used to be my favourite. Now it made me sick. I stared at the clock above the fridge. The ticking sounded louder than usual, each second pounding like an accusation. Why me? Why not someone else? Was it was too easy to clean, or maybe she thought I'd cover for her, take the hit, like always. But this wasn't a missed chart note. This wasn't switching shifts or fudging an IV time. This was a man's death. And suddenly I hated her. Not just for what she did, but for making me feel like I had done it. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't come from your enemies. It comes from the ones you trusted to carry your body out of the fire. I stood up, threw away her coffee, and I pulled my coat off the back of her chair like it was soaked in blood. I couldn't prove it, not yet. but I could watch and wait, because people like Nina, they always slip eventually. They talk too long, stay too late. Forget which story they told to who, and when they do, I'd be there. Later that day, during rounds, she avoided my eyes. She was too perfect, overcompensating, laughing too loud at Dr. Field's jokes, offering to take extra patients, trying to patch holes before the water came in, but I knew where to look. In her notes, too neat. In her tone, too calm. And in the way she brushed past me in the hall, whispering, "Don't make this worse than it already is." She knew I wouldn't stay quiet. She was warning me, threatening me. And I realized something in that moment. She didn't just betray me, she underestimated me. The silence in the break room wasn't an accident. It was a test. And I had just passed it. But the real test was just beginning. Hospitals talk, not in words, but in glances, in doors that close a second too early, in the way voices drop when you enter a room. I didn't need proof anymore, I just had to listen. It started in the East Wing hallway, near the charting station, that dead zone between oncology and cardiology. Always too quiet, always too cold. I was walking past when I heard it. Isn't that her? The one who overdosed the old guy? Thought she was better than that. They didn't say my name, they didn't have to. It stuck to me like disinfectant and guilt, invisible but always there. I turned the corner and they scattered. Nurses, ones I used to joke with, ones who used to ask me about their kids' asthma meds. Now they barely met my eyes. I was no longer doctor. Kay, I was the whisper, the ghost in the hallway. But ghosts, they listen and they learn. The third floor nurses' station always ran hot. Broken AC, flickering lights, that one chair that squeaked like a dying mouse. It was where the residents vented, said things they thought the walls would keep. And one night, I heard Nina. She was talking to Dr. Fields. I couldn't see them, just their shadows stretching against the frosted glass. I just think she's unraveling. Honestly, I'm worried about her judgment. My stomach flipped. She wasn't just defending herself, she was building a case. She wasn't going to let it fade. She was going to bury me, bit by bit, rumour by rumour, till I was just noise. And the worst part, it was working. Dr. Fields stopped assigning me trauma intakes. The med students whispered after rounds. Someone posted a passive, aggressive meme on the resident group chat. A scalpel with the caption, "Handle with care or don't." Clever. But I wasn't laughing. Instead, I started collecting. Moments, missteps, every time Nina covered a shift she wasn't listed on. Every time she used someone else's login. Every time she disappeared mid-round, only to reappear with perfect notes and a too clean explanation. I wasn't just a ghost anymore. I was a shadow, following her. And that's when I saw it. Friday night, just past midnight. Nina exiting the supply room with Maribel, the same nurse who had warned me, the same nurse who said Nina had borrowed my coat, only now. She was laughing with her, smiling, like nothing had ever happened. I stood there, frozen, watching two people I once trusted. Talk about the weather, like my career wasn't hanging from a thread they both held. Maybe Maribel hadn't been trying to help me after all. Maybe she was just trying to warn me. The way wolves sometimes growl before they bite. That's when I knew. I wasn't in a hospital anymore. I was in a game. And I was already 3 moves behind. I wanted to scream, to drag them both into the chief's office and demand justice, but I had no proof, no footage, just shadows and whispers and the terrifying truth. A part of me started to wonder, what if they were right? What if I had made a mistake? What if I had killed that man? And my mind was just protecting me from the truth. What if I didn't deserve to come back from this? But then a moment, a shift. Dr. Yoon, our cardiologist, found me in the stairwell later that week. She didn't say much, just handed me a sticky note, one word. Anesthesia. No explanation, just that word, and a room number. I went there, a forgotten closet near pre-op. Inside, a locked terminal. Logged in under my name, but set to Nina's default layout. She'd been using it, switching identities, not just once, repeatedly. And I finally understood. This wasn't about a mistake. It was about a pattern, a system. And I was just the first one who noticed. Patterns don't always look like patterns. Until you start connecting the silences. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the screen in the dark supply closet, heart pounding so loud I thought it might trigger a code blue. Every keystroke led to another ghost, another patient, another name. And the same badge. Mine. 3 overdoses, 2 cancelled consults, 1 missed DNR, all signed under my login, all while I was somewhere else. It wasn't just Mr. Halberd. This wasn't an accident. It was a campaign. I printed what I could. Screenshots, logs, access records, shoved them into a plain folder and tucked it under my scrubs. And then I waited, watched. Nina's behaviour started to shift. She was tense, always checking her phone, snapping at nurses who brought her the wrong file. One night, I caught her in the stairwell, whispering into her phone. No, I didn't mean to. He flatlined before I could undo it. Undo what? I didn't ask. I just wrote it down, every word. I was building a case. But somewhere between the evidence and the anger, I began to wonder, why was she doing this? This wasn't just ego. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was deliberate, calculated, and more than anything, desperate. Then it hit me. I remembered a night 3 months ago, Nina sobbing in the locker room, mascara streaking down her cheeks, saying something about her mother's insurance. She said the bills were stacking, that they'd sell the house if she didn't finish her residency, that if she failed out, there'd be nothing left. That night, I just hugged her, said, "We'll figure it out." But maybe she already had. She didn't just need to survive this program. She needed to win, even if it meant burning everyone else down to do it. I couldn't prove the motive, but I didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. That morning I walked into Dr. Fieldsy's office. His blinds were half closed. The room smelled like black coffee and disinfectant. His face was unreadable, the same face that had once told me, "You're the kind of doctor I'd want for my own family." Now he wouldn't meet my eyes. "I need 5 minutes," I told him. "No more, no less." He nodded, reluctantly. I laid the folder on his desk like a scalpel, opened it slowly. Audit trails, login inconsistencies, shift rosters. A trail of digital fingerprints leading directly to Nina's hands. I didn't make a mistake, I told him, but I watched one happen over and over. He flipped through the pages. His fingers trembled. His jaw tightened. Then he closed the folder. "I need time," he said. "I need to confirm this." It wasn't a victory, not yet, but it was the first time in weeks I felt like I was standing on solid ground. I walked out into the hallway, folderless, tired, empty. And there she was, Nina, leaning against the wall, eyes bloodshot, arms crossed. She didn't speak, but her expression said everything. She knew, and she wasn't sorry. "You should have let it die," she said. "That wet old man was going to die anyway. You just made noise." I looked her dead in the eye. You didn't just kill him. You killed your chance to ever be what you pretended to be. She didn't follow me. She didn't defend herself. She just stood there, frozen, like a statue made of regret. That was the last time I ever saw her in that hallway, but her presence still echoed through it. Every whisper, every sideways glance, every almost apology from people who almost believed me, they lingered, because truth doesn't erase a stain. It just makes it harder to ignore. There was only one piece left, one final crack to expose, and it was hidden in the one place I never thought to look, inside myself. I thought the story would end with justice, expose the lie, clear my name, walk back into the hospital like I never left. But real life doesn't hand out clean endings, not in places that smell like bleach and broken trust. The investigation took weeks, long dragging days, where my badge stayed deactivated, where my inbox filled with apologies that arrived too late. "You were right," they said. "Looks like your credentials were misused." Unfortunate series of events. Unfortunate. Like spilling coffee, like locking your keys in the car, not like destroying someone's entire future. And Nina? She was gone. Resigned before the final meeting. No hearing, no press, no consequences, just a neatly folded coat left in her empty locker. Like she'd never existed, but she did. And so did the wreckage. Then came the part I didn't expect. The letter left in my mailbox. No return address. No handwriting I recognized. Just 3 typed lines. "You didn't kill him, but you should have caught it. You weren't paying attention, and people died for it. It wasn't signed, but I knew who it was from. Not Nina, me, or the version of me I had buried, the one who had seen the signs, the one who had noticed the cracks in Nina's hands, the red in her eyes, the tremor in her voice, and looked away, because I needed her to be okay, because I didn't want to believe that someone I loved, like family, could do something so final. So I let it happen, not the overdose, but everything that led to it. I let it happen. There's no box to check for that kind of guilt, no protocol, no chart note, no amount of exoneration that makes you feel clean again. But you learn to live with the stain, or at least you learn to walk around it. I returned to the hospital 6 weeks later, not as a doctor, but as a guest. They invited me to speak at a morbidity and mortality conference. The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood in front of rows of white coats. Some looked away, others leaned forward like they wanted a show, and I gave them one. My name was on the chart, but so was my silence. So was my blindness. So was my comfort. I didn't commit the act, but I helped create the space where it could happen. Not one person clapped, and that was okay, because I wasn't there for redemption. I was there to testify, not against her, against myself. Afterward, a resident stopped me in the hallway, eyes wide, hands shaking. You still became a doctor after that?" "No," I said, "I became human. Because sometimes surviving isn't about getting back what you lost. It's about knowing what you lost. And choosing to keep going anyway." Later that evening, I stood by the window in the East Wing. Same hallway, same smell. But something had shifted. The lights flickered softly overhead. The floor was waxed, but worn. And my reflection in the glass, it looked older, clearer, like someone who had walked through fire and was no longer afraid to show the burns. The confession was never hers to give. It was always mine to live with.